And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing some areas of new ice developing here along the eastern Arctic coast, even on the western Arctic coast here, as well as in Kotzebue Sound there, and even Norton Bay has some new ice showing up. And otherwise, this area out here slowly beginning to expand, and about the same pattern is expected for the next few days. So moving on to the for the weather tonight, this low tracking eastward, spreading snow eastward with it all the way in toward Mackenzie Bay there. All of the Brooks Range, gusty winds out of the west and southwest for the western and central Arctic coast will continue, although starting to lighten up though and diminish a little bit there for the Point Hope, Cape Lisburne area, as well as along the northwest coast, with the light snow changing to scattered snow showers. Look for some scattered snow shower conditions over the central interior here, but to the south, variable clouds to mostly clear conditions with light winds and dry weather here. All of the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, and much of the northern Bering Sea. We've got a weakening system down here bringing some light rain to the, or continuing the light rain here for the central Aleutians and Fox Islands into the Alaska Peninsula. And for the southeast coast, rain becoming lighter, but continuing to fall here, especially over the southern areas tonight as this weak low there drifts into Dixon Entrance, but tapering off to the north there in areas north of Juneau, probably remaining dry or becoming dry. And for the Wednesday outlook, look for some clearing up around Lincoln and Glacier Bay, possibly into the northern panhandle as well. Just some diminishing scattered shower conditions down to the south as that weak low just troughs out and continues to move east-southeastward. Weak low here in the Gulf of Alaska, really not producing much in the way of weather, but we have some moisture here dropping down into the Alaska range for areas of light snow there, some of which could slip down into the Talkeetna Mountains, maybe the extreme northern Susitna Valley, but that's not too likely. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, areas of light snow in the central interior. Areas of light snow continue there for the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, possibly ending here on the western Arctic coast. Winds a little gusty out of the west for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline with snow in that area. And high pressure ridging across the Bering Sea here with the center farther out to the west there. Keeps winds light and conditions dry right into the southwest interior. This system, this front here, weakening and beginning to shift off to the east, so look for scattered showers or light rain here with that feature through tomorrow as far east as the Alaska Peninsula. Then that drops right off to the southeast here and replaced by a drier north and northeasterly wind flow with some clearing for Adak and Atka, mostly clear for the Alaska Peninsula. And a lot of clearing here continues across southern Alaska, Kodiak Island, right on up into the western Brooks Range area. Still some gusty west winds and some skiffs of light snow grazing the central and eastern Arctic coastal areas. Chance of snow showers here, eastern Alaska Range, Copper River Basin area. Otherwise dry with some clearing for Prince William Sound. And then that weak low here starting to pick some moisture up and move it right into the southeast coast for a cloudy, occasionally damp day in that area. For the coastal water forecast here, south coast, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Central coast, north to northeast at 20. And east-northeast winds 15 knots for the north coast. Lynn Canal, northerlies at 15 knots. North wind at 10 for Stevens Passage. Light variable winds in store for the Clarence Strait area. Seas down to 2 feet. And for the day on Thursday, on the south coast, west winds at 20 knots. West-southwest winds at 15 knots for the central coast, and the north coast looking at north to northeast winds at about 10 knots. Otherwise, central and northern inside waters looking at south winds at 15 knots with a southeast wind at 15 knots for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, small craft advisories tomorrow. West wind 25 knots, seas 4 feet. And for the eastern North Gulf Coast, west winds at 15 to 25. Northwest 25 for the western North Gulf Coast. Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, northeast 15 knots, northwest at 20 knots, southern Cook Inlet. Gale warnings for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands for west-northwest winds at 35 knots with seas 7 to 10 feet. And for the day on Thursday, small craft advisories now as winds diminish and become north at 25 knots for the Barren Islands of Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, north wind, 20 knots, seas 5 feet. Prince William Sound, north wind at 15 knots, seas 3 feet. And north to northeast winds for the North Gulf Coast at 20 knots. Kodiak Island, west winds 25 knots. Tomorrow, with seas at about 5 feet. Light variable winds for Bristol Bay. And the Alaska Peninsula, east-northeast winds 10 to 25 knots. For the peninsula on Thursday, we've got north to northeast winds here, as you can see, at 15 to 20 knots, with seas running 4 to 5 feet or so, or 3 to 5 feet. Bristol Bay northeast now at 20 knots. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, north to northwest winds, 25 knots. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, small craft advisories. Northeast winds 25 to 30 knots, seas 7 to 10 feet. Adak and Atka, north to northeast winds at 30 knots. And then those winds diminish heading west there down to 15 knots with seas around 6 feet. And for the outlook on Thursday, south winds, Kisk Island westward to Shimia at 25 knots. And Amchitka Island, north winds 15 to 20 knots. Adak and Atka, north winds at 25 knots. And north to northeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the eastern Aleutians. For the southwest coast on Wednesday, north winds here 10 to 15 knots. North at 10 for St. Lawrence Island. Northwest at 10 for Norton Sound. St. Matthew Island, northwest wind 15 knots. Northeast at 20 for the Pribilof Islands. And for the day on Thursday, light west breeze there for Norton Sound at 5 knots. About the same for St. Lawrence Island. Northwest at 10 for the Yukon Delta coast. North at 20 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline. Pribilof Islands, north winds at 15 knots, but west at 15 for St. Matthew Island. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, north to west winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories also out for the Central Arctic coast for north winds at 25 knots. Seas 5 feet. Western Arctic coast, north at 20, and the Chukchi Sea, west-northwest winds at 20 to 25 knots, with seas running 6 to 9 feet. And for the day on Thursday, much lighter winds for the Chukchi Sea, out of the east and northeast at just 5 to 10 knots now, seas coming down to 2 feet, north at 15 knots for the western Arctic coast, central coast, northwest at 20 knots. But stronger winds, you can see gale warnings here. Flaxman Island to Demarcation Point, looking at west winds at 40 knots, seas up to 9 feet.